Hi, welcome to our next segment. In this video, we're going to be looking at Indian and Southeast Asian art. The fertile Indus and Ganges Valley were too great a temptation for outsiders, and thus the history of India has become a history of invasions and assimilations. But those who invaded came to stay, and so Indian life today is a layering of disparate populations to create a cosmopolitan culture. There are 18 official languages in India. Hindi, the one foreigners think of as the national language, is spoken natively by only 20% of the population. Along with Hindus and Muslims, there are many concentrations of Buddhists, Christians, and Sikhs, as well as a myriad of tribal religions. Geographically, India has an enormous range as well, from the tallest mountains to the vast deserts and tropical forests. This is one of the most diverse countries on earth. The arts play a critical role in Indian life. Most rulers have been extremely generous patrons, commissioning great buildings, sculptures, and murals to enhance civic and religious life, as well as their own glory. The interconnectedness of the arts in India is crucial to understanding Indian artistic life. Monuments are conceived as a combination of the arts. The artists who work on them carry out their work at the behest of an artist who acts as a team leader with a single artistic vision. Thus, Indian monuments have a surprising uniformity of style. The design of religious art and architecture may have been determined by a priest or other religious advisor who ensures that proportions and iconography of monuments agreed with descriptions supplied in canonical texts and diagrams. Much as in the European tradition, artists were trained as apprentices in workshops. The process was comprehensive. The artists learned everything from how to make a brush to how to create intricate miniatures or vast murals. Indians are highly organized in their approach to artistic training. So in this artistic tradition, we're going to be studying and learning about two major religions, Hinduism and Buddhism. Hinduism is bound to the hierarchical structure of the caste system, a categorization of members of society into defined social classes. An individual's position in the caste system is thought to be a reflection of accumulated merit in past lives, and this is thought of as karma. Observance of the Dharma or behavior consistent with one's caste and status is discussed in many earlier philosophical texts. Not every religious practice can be undertaken by all members of society. Similarly, different activities are considered appropriate for different stages of life, with study and raising families necessary for early stages, and reflection and renunciation goals of later years. A religious life need not be spiritual to the exclusion of worldly pleasures or rewards, such as the pursuit of material success and legitimate pleasure, depending on one's position in life. Hindus believe in the importance of the observation of appropriate behavior, including numerous rituals and the ultimate goal of moksha, the release or liberation from the endless cycle of birth. Here are some common beliefs of Hinduism. So take some time to look through these. I'm not going to read them out loud to you, but please do read them. So look closely at the image in front of you. Imagine an elegant woman walks barefoot along a path accompanied by her attendant. She steps on a thorn and turns adeptly, bending her leg, twisting her body, and arching her back to point out the thorn and ask her attendant's help in removing it. As she turns, the viewer sees her face. It is round like the full moon, with a slender nose, plump lips, arched eyebrows, and eyes shaped like a lotus petal. While her right hand points to the thorn in her foot, her left hand raises in a gesture of reassurance. Images of beautiful women like this one from the northwest exterior wall of Lakshma Temple in India have captivated viewers for centuries. Depicting idealized female beauty was important for temple architecture and considered auspicious, even protective. Texts written for temple builders describe different types of women to include within a temple sculptural program. and emphasize their role as symbols of fertility, growth, and prosperity. Additionally, images of loving couples, known as Mithuna, literally the state of being a couple, appeared on the Lakshmana temples as symbols of divine union and moksha. The final release from samsara, the cycle of death and rebirth. The temple at Khajuraho included the Lakshmana temple have become famous for their amorous images, some of which graphically depict figures engaged in sexual intercourse. These erotic images were not intended to be titillating or provocative, but instead serve ritual and symbolic functions significant to the builders, patrons, and devotees of these captivating structures. The Lakshmana temple was the first of several temples built by the Shandila kings in the newly created capital of Khajuraho between the 10th and 13th centuries. The Shandilas patronized artists, poets, and performers and built irrigation system, palaces, and numerous temples out of sandstone. At one time, over 80 temples existed at this site, including several Hindu temples dedicated to the gods Shiva, Vishnu, and Surya. There were also temples built to honor the divine teachers of Jainism, an ancient Indian religion. Approximately 30 temples remain in Khajuraho today. The original patron of the Lakshmana temple was a leader of the Shandila clan, Yashavaharman, who gained control over territories in the Budelkhand region of central India that was once part of the larger Pratihara dynasty. Yashavaharman sought to build a temple to legitimize his rule over these territories, though he died before it was finished. His son, Dahanga, completed the work and dedicated the temple in 954 CE. The central deity at the Lakshmana temple is an image of Vishnu in his three-headed form, known as Vaikuntha, who sits inside the temple's inner womb chamber, also known as Girha, an architectural feature at the heart of all Hindu temples, regardless of size or location. And that is spelled Garba and then Griha. The womb chamber is the symbolic and physical core of the temple shrine. It is dark, windowless, and designed for intimate, individualized worship of the divine, quite different from large congregational worshiping spaces that characterize many Christian churches and Muslim mosques. The Lakshmana temple is an excellent example of Nagara-style Hindu temple architecture. In its most basic form, a Nagara, and it's spelled Nagara, temple consists of a shrine known as a Vimana, Vimana, essentially the shell of the womb chamber, and a flat-roofed entry porch known as a Mandapa, Mandapa. The shrine of Nagara temples include a base platform and a large superstructure known as a Sikhara. Sikhara, meaning mountain peak, which viewers can see from a distance. The Lakshmana temple's superstructure appears like the many rising peaks of a mountain range. Devotees approach the Lakshmana temple from the east and walk around its entirety, an activity known as circumambulation, and that's spelled Circumambulation. They begin walking along the large plinth of the temple's base, moving in a clockwise direction starting from the left of the stairs. So that's a really important ritual, circumambulation. Sculpted friezes along the plinth depict images of daily life, love, and war, and many recall historical events of the Shandila period. Devotees then climb the stairs of the plinth and encounter another set of images, including deities sculpted within niches on the exterior wall of the temple. In one niche, we see the elephant-headed Ganesh appears. His presence suggests that devotees are moving in the correct direction for circumambulation. As Ganesh is a god typically worshipped at the start of things, other sculpted forms appear nearby in lively active postures, swaying hips, bent arms, and tilted heads, which create a dramatic triple bend contrapposto pose, all carved in deep relief, emphasizing their three-dimensionality. It is here, specifically on the exterior juncture wall between the Vimana and the Mandapa, where devotees, let me go back to the diagram, where devotees encounter erotic images of couples embraced in sexual union. This place of architectural juncture serves as a symbolic function as the joining of the Vimana and Mandapa, accentuated by the depictions of joined couples. Four smaller subsidiary shrines sit at each corner of the plinth. I'm going to go back to the diagram. These shrines appear like miniature temples with their own vismanas, sikaras, and mandapas, and womb chambers with images of deities. Originally, other forms of avatars of Vishnu. So an avatar is sort of a different version of these gods. So they appear, they have different attributes. Um, Following circumambulation of the exterior of the temple, devotees encounter three mandapas, which prepare them for entering the Vimana. Each mandapa has a pyramidal shape roof that increases in size as devotees move from east to west. Once devotees pass through the third and final mandapa, they find an enclosed passage along the walls of the shrine, allowing them to circumambulate the sacred structure in a clockwise direction. The act of circumambulation, of moving around the various components of the temple, allowed devotees to physically experience this sacred space, and with it, the body of the divine. I'm going to break from my script for a minute, and I want you guys to think about and compare and contrast, these relief carvings with say, relief carvings that would be displayed on a Christian basilica. So it's very important that we understand that these depictions of physical love and pleasure are really meant as a gateway to physical pleasure. I'm sorry, spiritual pleasure. So they have a very, they see whereas with Christian narratives, especially during the medieval period, we were taught, to, see the body as shameful, and, physical love as bad and lustful. Here, it's, a gateway. Indians, wanted to experience physical pleasure and love and appreciated the nude form and the eroticism of the body and embraced it in sort of their spiritual practices. So we're going to turn to looking at a sculpture. The art of the medieval India, like the art of medieval Europe, was primarily in the service of religion. The devotee's spiritual experience was enhanced by meditation inspired by the work of art and architecture, just as the luminous upper chapel of Sainte-Chapelle dazzled and overwhelmed worshippers in France. This was a Gothic church. The looming bronze statues of Shiva and Parvati, for example, in the inner walls of the Mikshi temple in Mandura in South India, would have awed a Hindu devotee. It is important to keep in mind that the bronze Shiva as Lord of the Dance, and that's an avatar, Nata Raja, Nata meaning dance or performance, and Raja meaning king or lord, is a sacred object that has been taken out of its original context. In fact, we don't even know where this particular sculpture was originally venerated. In the intimate spaces of the Florence and Herbert Irving South Asian galleries and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, The Shiva Natagara is surrounded by other metal statues of Hindu gods, including the lords Vishnu, Parvati, and Hanuman. It is easy to become absorbed in the dark quiet of these galleries with its remarkable collection of divine figures. But it is important to remember that this particular statue was intended to be movable, which explains its moderate size. It's quite small and sizable circular base, ideal for lifting and hoisting onto shoulders. So this is something I talked a little bit about when we were talking about Mesoamerican art and sort of taking objects from another culture or religion and displaying them and sort of categorizing them and archiving them in a museum. And so they lose their, it's important to remember to not take these out of context. Often there's some sort of ritual that accompanies these sculptures or these objects, and it's not the object itself that is so important. From the 11th century and onwards, Hindu devotees carried these statues in processional parades as priests, followed by chanting prayers and bestowing blessings on people gathered for this purpose. Sometimes the statues would be adorned in resplendent red and green clothes and gold jewelry to denote the glorious human form of the gods. In this procession, the Shiva Natagara may have had its legs wrapped with a white and red cloth, adorned with flowers and surrounded by candles. In a religious Hindu context, the statue is the literal embodiment of the divine. When the worshiper comes before the statue and begins to pray, faith activates the divine energy inherent in the statue. And at that moment, Shiva is present. So it's really important that there is this sort of connection with the worshiper and the statue for this um, for this faith or this sort of connection to the divine to occur. Shiva constitutes a part of a powerful triad of divine energy within the cosmos of Hindu religion. There is Brahma, the benevolent creator of the universe. There's Vishnu, the sagacious preserver. Then there is Shiva, the destroyer. Destroyer in this sense is not an entirely negative force, but one that is expansive in its impact. In Hindu religious philosophy, all things must come to a natural end so they can begin anew. And Shiva is the agent that brings about this end so that the new cycle can begin. The Metropolitan Museum's Shiva Natagara was made sometime in the 11th century during the Chola dynasty, and that's spelled Chola. And this dynasty occurred between the 9th and 13th century CE in South India, and what is now the state of Tamil Nadu. One of the longest lasting empires of South India, the Chola dynasty heralded a golden age of exploration, trade, and artistic development. A great area innovation within the arts of the Chola period was in the field of metalwork, particularly in bronze sculpture. The expanse of the Chola Empire stretched southeast toward Sri Lanka and gave the kingdom access to vast copper reserves that enabled the proliferation of bronze work by skilled artisans. During this period, a new kind of sculpture is made, one that combines the expressive qualities of stone temple carving with rich iconography possible in casting. The image of Shiva is taken from the ancient Indian manual of visual depiction, the Shilapa Shastras, and this is translated into the science or rules of sculpture, which contain a precise set of measurements and shapes for the limbs and proportions of the divine figure. Arms were to be long like stalks of a bamboo, faces round like the moon, and eyes shaped like the almonds or the leaves of a lotus. The Shastras were a primer on the ideals of beauty and physical perfection within ancient Hindu ideology. So think about some other sculptures of ideal beauty that we've been confronted with. I mean, one that comes to mind is Polycletos's The Canon. and his sculpture, the spear bearer, that was the sort of the ancient Greek idea of beauty and proportion. So that might be a good cross current for you guys to think about. Here, Shiva embodies those perfect physical qualities as he is frozen in the monument of his dance within the cosmic circle of fire that is a simultaneous and continuous creation and destruction of the universe. The ring of fire that surrounds the figure is the encapsulated cosmos of mass, time, and space, whose endless cycle of annihilation and regeneration moves in tune to the beat of Shiva's drum and the rhythm of his step. In his upper right hand, he holds the damaru, the drum whose beats symbolize the act of creation and the passage of time. His lower right hand, with his palm raised and facing the viewer, is lifted in a gesture of the Abhaya Mudra, and that's spelled Abhaya, and then Mudra, Mudra, which says to the worshiper, "Be not afraid, for those who follow the path of righteousness will have my blessing." Shiva's lower left hand stretches diagonally across his chest with his palm facing down toward his raised left foot, which signifies spiritual grace and fulfillment through meditation and mastery over one's baser appetites. In his upper left hand, he holds the Anji, the flame of destruction that annihilates all that the sound of the damara, or the drum, has beat into existence. So here is a detail of Shiva's upper left hand holding the Agni, the flame of destruction. And then here we see Shiva's right foot that stands upon a huddled dwarf, the demon Apasmara, the embodiment of ignorance. Shiva's hair, the long hair of the yogi, streams out across the space within the halo of fire that constitutes the universe. Throughout this entire process of chaos and renewal, the face of the god remains tranquil, transfixed in what the historian of South Asian art, Hendrik Zimmer, calls the mask of God's eternal essence. The supple and expressive quality of the dancing Shiva is one of the touchstones of South Asian and indeed world sculpture. When the French sculptor Auguste Rodin saw some photographs of the 11th century bronze Shiva Natagara in the Madras Museum around 1915, and we will be looking at his work as well, Rodin. He wrote that it seemed to him the perfect expression of rhythmic movement in the world. In an essay he wrote that was published in 1921, that the Shiva Natagara has what many people cannot see, the unknown depths, the core of life. There is a grace and elegance, but beyond grace there is a perfection. The English philosopher Aldous Huxley said in an interview in 1961 that the Hindu image of God as a dancer is unlike anything he has seen in Western art. We don't have anything that approaches the symbolism of this work of art, which is both cosmic and psychological. So I'm going to stop here. My dogs are eyeing me because I think they need to go out, and I'm afraid they're going to start barking. So stay tuned for part 2.